How would you like to have the skill to get unlimited fast funding for your deals? And no, I'm not talking about wholesaling, business lines of credit, private money, even creative financing or HELOCs. I'm not talking about any of those things. What we're talking about today is novations. Novations. Hello, my name is Curtis Vaughn, and I help entrepreneurs, professionals break free from the grind and build lasting wealth through real estate. So, what is a novation? What kind of deal is that, Curtis? All right, great question. Glad you asked. And simply put, the actual definition of novation means the substitution of a new contract in place of an old one. And how does that work? What does that even mean? All right, so you are simply going to provide an easy way for a seller to get rid of an unwanted property as a concierge service. No, you're not going to be a real estate agent, although you will work with one to get this deal done. But you are going to provide a service of just being a concierge, making things super easy and simple for the seller to get rid of an unwanted property. You're going to be the one working with agents, coordinate showings, getting photos done, any inspections, and even possibly even repairs to the property to get the deal done at closing. So that's kind of a big, broad picture. So how does it functionally work? You are going to make an offer on the property. You're going to make a cash offer to the seller on the property. And let's say, as an investor, you need to be at $70,000, for example. But when you present that offer to the seller, they say, ain't no way I'm selling my property for $70,000. I know it's worth more than that, Curtis. You know that you might be able to get $100,000 for that property on the open market in a short amount of time. So yes, you can't do 70, but maybe the seller will accept 80. So if you can manage to sell the property for $100,000, that gap between the 80 and the 100 can be yours. It's that simple. You say, Mr. Seller, I'm going to give you my offer $70,000 for that property. They say, absolutely not, Curtis. That's crazy town, man. I know I can get 80 for this property. I want 80 for it. So you say, okay, if I give you 80, we have a deal. Okay, great. And then from there, you can start negotiating and presenting them the concierge service. So they can't meet you at the 70, but you know you can get 100 for it on the open because you've done your due diligence, you've run the numbers, you've crunched the numbers, and you know I can get $100,000 for this property, for example. So at this point, you can transfer it into a novation deal. And so what's the steps involved in getting a novation deal done? Step one, first of all, you gotta be super transparent with the seller. It's not gonna work if you're trying to be shady. It's not gonna work if you're trying to hide the truth or conceal what your actual intentions are. You have to be super abundantly transparent and clear with the seller what you're doing. And you have to frame it in a way that it sounds like something that they would actually want to do. So that's really step one. Agree to the price with the seller for the property and fully disclose your intentions to not be the end buyer. I'm not gonna be the one buying this property, Mr. Seller, but I'm gonna find you a buyer. And I'm gonna handle all the stuff, all the paperwork, all these things on your behalf and find you somebody who's gonna pay your price and get you that $80,000. And I'm gonna keep it balanced. So as long as as long as the seller is fully aware of your intentions, everything's gonna go smoothly. So you gotta make sure you're fully, I can't stress this enough. You gotta make sure you're fully disclosing your intentions up front with the seller. As long as you do that, everything else is gonna be super simple. So step two is just gonna market the property. So let's say they agree to it. They say they agree to the $80,000. Your goal is to sell it for $100,000. And you're pretty confident in that number that you can get $100,000 for it. You're going to put that property on the MLS. Now, there's a couple ways you can do that. My preferred method, flat fee brokerage. I think that's a fantastic. You will save yourself so much cash, so much cash. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you can get one as cheap as like 1%. Like a 99 flat fee, and maybe they'll charge you like 1% at closing, which will save you a lot of money because like most real estate agents will charge you 3% to list the property, you know? So if you want to save yourself a couple, like 2% on a deal, which can add up, a flat fee brokerage can work for you. And there's one that I recommend. It's called Baycom, Beycome. Fantastic company. They don't operate in all 50 states, but they do operate. Maybe I'll put a list of the places they operate in the description. Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. But you can look it up. Baycom, Beycome. Check out their company. And there's, I believe, in Illinois. This is not an exhaustive list. Just to give you some kind of idea. Illinois, Florida, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina. I want to say Ohio as well, but look it up for yourself. Check them out. They're in multiple different states across the country, but it can save you a lot of headache, and they're actually really responsive. If that doesn't work, if you're in a state that they're not operating in, then you'd actually just talk to an agent, find a actual listing agent, explain exactly what you're doing, because you're not hiding anything from the seller. The seller, you got a contract with the seller. Seller is well aware of what you're doing. And you just tell them, hey, I have this property under contract. I'm going to novate this deal. I'm working on behalf of the seller in this transaction. I'm going to be signing the purchase agreement or the offers. I'll sign off on the offers and all that kind of stuff. They work with the agent directly, and just make sure you try to find somebody who's investor friendly. Find somebody who's invested themselves. They'll probably make things a lot simpler and easier. And just explain the situation to them, and they'll actually list the property to you before you, and they'll charge you probably like 3% to list the property, which is fine. Because what's going to be great about that is if you do this outside of your own, if you're doing it like in another state or somewhere you're not local to, then they can be the point person for the showings. They can take photos of the property, like little simple photos, just to give you some idea of the condition of the property. They can do a lot of the leg on ground leg work. They can be your boots on the ground to help get the deal done, and rightfully so, because they're getting paid a commission. So they're incentivized to help you get the deal done. So yeah, that's absolutely one thing you can do is use an agent. But I highly recommend, if you can, go with Baycom to save yourself some money. But either way will work. So that's step 2, market the property. Now, the cool thing is, since you're putting this property on the MLS, you have access to all of those great investors and buyers. And here's the thing, like actual buyers, people who want to live in the property, will generally pay a lot more than an investor can. So that's how this works. You're not trying to sell it to, it's not going to work for like a super distressed property. This is a property that maybe needs a tiny amount of work, and for whatever reason, the seller is in a position that they're just done with that property. I think a lot of times you're going to find that sellers who are tired landlords are probably your biggest, probably your most frequent person that's going to accept this type of deal, because they're just, what if they don't live there? They want to get rid of the property as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, and they're just kind of tired and fed up with it. And they don't want to have anything else to do with it. So a lot of times that's going to be the person that's going to work best for this type of scenario. But it can work for people. I've had it work for people who, that's their primary residence. So don't let me put you in the box. It can work either way. But I think a lot of times it'll end up being like tired landlords. It'll be the easiest sell on that. But in any case, step 3. So step 1, fully disclose your intentions and make sure you put the property under contract. Step 2, market the property on the MLS. And step 3, once you get an acceptable offer, sign off on it and submit that and all the documentations on behalf of the seller to the title company. So that's what you need to do. Those are the big picture wise. That's what you need to do. Now, here's some things to be able to get this deal done, functionally get it done. There's a couple things you got to do. In your purchase agreement, you have to have what's called a novations clause in it. And that gives you the right to exchange your original agreement with the seller with a new agreement. That's where the name novations comes from. You're exchanging one agreement for a new agreement. So when a new offer comes in, you're going to sign that new offer on behalf of the seller and say, yes, we accept this offer. And then because you have this novation clause in your original agreement, you're swapping out your old agreement that's gone. And now we're operating off this new agreement. Boom. So that's why you have to have a novations clause in your original purchase agreement. It gives you the right to do that. Another thing you have to have signed, and sometimes notarized, not in every state, but an attorney in fact needs to be signed by the seller. An attorney in fact is not power of attorney. This is very, very limited. Okay, so it's not that you're saying I have the right to speak, like sign documents on behalf of the seller in all different scenarios of their life. That's power of attorney. Attorney, in fact, gives you a very, very limited power or ability to sign an offer on behalf of the seller. That's pretty much it. And really to work on their behalf to market the property. It's very, very limited what you have the power and a right to do. So it's not like is not the same thing as power of attorney. It sounds similar, but it's not. It's very, very limited and only applies to this particular arrangement for their house, for the sale of their house or their property rather. So, and in some states, the attorney in fact has to be notarized by the seller. So that's why it's super important that you're upfront and clear with the seller. Here's what we're doing, and here's how it's going to work. So as long as you do those things, the seller should have no problem signing an attorney. In fact, I usually will just package all that together with the purchase agreement, have the seller sign the purchase agreement and get the attorney in fact notarized at the same time. That way, everything's just taken care of immediately and done. Keep it all simple. Now, the third piece of documentation that you need is called a novations agreement, the actual novations agreement itself. That's a separate document that literally lists the original purchase offer and then the new purchase offer, new buyer. It shows that you have a contract with the seller originally, and they want to swap that out for the new buyer and seller in that agreement and that new purchase price. And it also states that you get the balance. This is very important. So this is why you want to make sure this is all outlined, that you get the difference between what the seller was promised and what the new buyer is paying, minus any closing costs, attorney fees, anything like that, or commissions. So you're going to get the balance. So hopefully you baked in enough of a profit margin so all that qualifies. So that's why it's important to run your numbers and be super dialed in on what the property can sell for, should sell for as is, versus what the seller wants. So make sure that there's enough of a gap there to cover closing costs, to cover commissions, or anything like that, anything along those lines. But primarily closing costs, commissions, and anything else that might come up. So you want to make sure you got plenty of room there. And it's not going to work on every single deal, but it can work on more deals. That's why I say a flat fee brokerage will probably be your best bet to make it work with more deals. Because sometimes the agent commission can eat up so much of the profit margin that it just won't make it worthwhile for anybody. So flat fee brokerage can help you out quite a bit. So what would you say to a seller to convince them to even remotely do this? It's not a super difficult conversation. The first thing you need to do is make an offer on the property, and a cash offer. So you're gonna make them a cash offer and give them the number that's actually legitimate for you, like a great deal for you. You want to make sure run your numbers, make sure it's a great deal, and make sure you can make it work on your end. And if they decide they can't take that offer, this is when you start to talk about novations. So what do you say to the seller to get them to do this crazy thing called a novations? How does that work? What kind of hypnotic transfer you put them in? It's really not that complicated, because you're going to make a cash offer. If they reject the cash offer, then you say, okay, well, I understand our cash offer will not work for you, Mr. Seller. Unfortunately, we cannot make it work because as investors, our goal is to make a marginal profit. However, we have another program I think you might be a good fit for, and it's going to be our concierge service program. And the seller might ask, well, what's that? And you will say, this program is basically a partnership where we take all the hassle and responsibilities off your plate. And what we do is work with our network of buyers, agents, contractors to get this done. And we will put the money into the property if needed and coordinate everything to make sure the house gets sold quickly. Typically, we get all this done for you within 2 to 3 months. And we will fix or negotiate the repairs with our buyers so you don't have to worry about it. If we can bring a buyer and get you closer to what you are asking for, well, that sounds like something you'd be interested in. And so it might be something like maybe. So finally, you would say, all we need is the purchase agreement signed, some walkthroughs through the process, and some additional time, and we will handle all the realtors, title costs, and inspections. So you don't have to. The only thing we require from you is to sign the final closing paperwork, and you'll be able to sit back while we do the heavy lifting. Does this sound like a good option for you? And if they say yes, then fantastic. You have yourself a novation agreement. So you get the documentation signed by the seller. Like I said, the purchase agreement, the original purchase agreement, with the agreed upon price. And make sure, now do your due diligence, make sure you are running those numbers extremely well, and that you have a very, very good understanding of what it would take to sell that property within 2 to 3 months. Here's the thing, you're not going to get necessarily the full value of the property. You want to price it. Let's say the property is is worth maybe 115, 120. You want to price it low enough under that margin, and maybe even talk to if you're using a real estate agent, this would be a good time to actually speak to the real estate agent and say, hey, what do you think it will sell? What do you think it will sell for, or need to sell for, to sell within 2 to 3 months? You can literally just ask the agent that. And if they're a great real estate agent and investor themselves, they can probably give you a very clear understanding like what it would take to sell that property within 2 to 3 months. But typically you want to be, well under what it's actually worth to move it quickly. Depending on time, especially depending on time of year. If you try to do this in the wintertime, you got to set the seller expectations. Like, okay, this is the wintertime. It might take, maybe 4 months or 3 to 4 months to move the property. If it's summertime, springtime, you probably get done like a lot faster. So you got to keep that in mind as well. Make sure you know what time of year it is, and the seasonality of it, and all that kind of stuff. Other things to be considerate of is that you want to put money into the deal as far as like an earnest money deposit. And it doesn't have to be thousands of dollars. It can be like $500 to $1,000. But you want to be able to show the seller that you are serious on moving forward with the property and getting things done for them. That'll make the people a lot more confident in moving forward with the transaction. And also, if something goes south, and hopefully this doesn't happen, and you had to take them to court for whatever reason, you would be able to prove that you had a vested interest in the property and you weren't just like, trying to scam them or anything like that. So you want to make sure you set aside $500 to $1,000 for the deal to show your seriousness of one and your intentions of wanting to actually move forward on that property. And also keep track of any type of investment you make in the property, whether it be photos, if you get the property inspected or anything like that. Make sure you keep track of all those costs, because that just proves more so your intentions of moving forward on the property and get things done for the seller. Because you don't want to be a concierge service, and you want to make things as simple and easy for the seller as possible. That's the whole point. Other things to be on the lookout for. Number one is in the purchase agreement itself. You want to have the option, and you have to have this language in your purchase agreement to put a notice of interest on the property, and that has to be specifically stated in your purchase agreement that you have the right to put a notice of interest on the property. And the reason why that's so important, because if you are making an investment on the property of any kind, earnest money deposits, inspections, photos, maybe even small construction, like light construction work on the property, you want to make sure the seller is not going to just walk away from the deal or try to go around you and go directly to the buyer or anything like that. So being able to put a cloud on the title can help keep that from happening. So you only want to use this in a worst case scenario. You don't want to cloud somebody's title haphazardly, because it does prevent them from selling the property to somebody else. So you want to make sure you do this thoughtfully, and only under the circumstances that they're not communicating or trying to cut you out of the deal. It's like worst case scenario. Hopefully your relationship with the seller does not deteriorate to that point, but it can happen. It can happen. So this is like your option to protect yourself in the deal, because you are making an investment into the property, and you do have a legitimate agreement with the seller that they signed, fully aware of what you guys are doing. So it's only right for you to be able to protect yourself. But only, I'll caution you, only use this as a last resort. You don't want to just do that on every single deal. So that's all I'll say about that. Make sure you're using a company that's actually investor friendly. You don't want this is not going to work with just any title company. You want to make sure you are the one, and this should be in your purchase agreement with the seller, that you have the right to pick out the title company, and make sure you maintain that right throughout this whole process. Make sure you're the one picking the title company. Because not every title company is going to be aware of how a novation agreement works, and not every title company is investor friendly. So you want to ask, like when you start the conversation with the title company, just to feel them out, you want to make sure you ask them, hey, have you ever done assignments before, like wholesale assignments before, or have you ever done a novation before? And just find out what their status is on that. If they haven't done that before, then I'll probably move on to somebody who has at least done an assignment of contract with a wholesaler or something along those lines. Because like I said, all title companies are not created equally. Some don't want the hassle of dealing with all this stuff, and some do. Some are okay with it. So you're just going to make sure you do your due diligence and find a title company that will work with you on getting the deal done. Because it's not illegal. It's a good way to make a living. You can actually make quite a bit of money doing that. So But you want to do it with honesty and integrity, and make sure you find a title company that can do it and get it done easily for you as well. Now, if you get stuck somewhere and you just cannot move forward, let's say the title company or the closing attorney has an issue, just ask them what they need to get the deal done. It could be that simple. Just ask them what documentation they might need, what signatures on what type of documentation they might need to get this deal done. Because sometimes, things are just not clear. Because we think about, like, when you talk to somebody when you're talking to one person in the title company, they might not be the person that's actually working on your file. So you got to keep that in mind and just be flexible and be willing to just overcome whatever objections they might have. Figure out what the objection to the closing is and just fix it. It's that simple. Just find ask them what the solution is and just do it. And as long as you have established a working relationship with the seller and they're well aware of what's going on, if they need to sign extra documentation saying this is cool or that's cool or whatever, just do it. Just let the seller know, hey, we need this signed so we can get the closing done, and just hand it off to them, email to them, and they'll sign it and get it back to you. So it shouldn't be an issue, but just make sure if you get stuck somewhere, you ask them, how do we fix it? It's going to be that simple. Ask them how do you fix it, and then just do that thing. In some cases, you might need to submit an invoice in order to get the deal done. So you might need to submit an invoice to the title company to actually get the deal officially done and completed. So if you do, just do that. Just, find a standard invoice and submit that to them with your LLC and your business name and all that kind of stuff on there, and submit them a invoice for your services. And you're really going to be categorizing that as kind of marketing services, which is kind of what you're doing in this scenario. So, and then pretty much that's it. I mean, those are the big sticking points. But like I said, you are simply providing a service, a means for the seller to get rid of this property without any type of headache. You're going to take all the headache and burden and worry and stress of getting things done, like inspections, photos, negotiations, all the things that go along with that. And some people just don't want the hassle. Like I've talked to sellers who, the property belonged to a deceased relative, so it might work for that type of seller. Definitely, I think I got, like, for myself, like talking to tired landlords. That's definitely, you'll find a lot of tired landlords who just won't be done for one reason or another, and just want the headache gone. So it's not. There's no one cookie cutter solution for every single person, but this can be a solution for a lot of solutions that you come across if you present it the right way and you make it in a way that makes sense to them. So hopefully you have found some value. You talk about novations today. It's a high level strategy, but it does work. So hit me up if you have any questions. Shoot me an email, leave a comment in the comment section if you have any questions about it. But thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.